So we're going to go ahead and get it kicked off and start with our boosting collaboration topic. And Sarah, I'm going to pass that over to you so that way we can really just talk about how teams can really foster collaboration with generative AI, enabling them to really create those or generate those creative ideas, solutions, and content more efficiently. So would love to just kind of hear your take on that. And also just hear a little bit about what you're doing at Qualified with Gen AI.
Yeah, I love this particular topic, mostly because I think of it in two ways. I think of generative AI helping boost collaboration from an actual like tactical sense. So a good real life use case that we're using at Qualified is our customer success team. And this isn't our product, we're using other products for this, but like our customer success team, they're on calls with customers all day long. It's something we really differentiate ourselves on, is our ability to like really be close partners with all of our customers. But that also takes a lot of time. Like they're on calls all day, and it's really hard after those calls to sit down, take notes. What did we talk about on that call? What are my action items after this call that I need to focus on? And so something they've really started to do is use a tool that has generative AI in it that's on the calls with them all day. It takes notes for them. It helps, wrap up the call afterwards and send like a synopsis after. And here's what you talked about. Here's the takeaways from it. Here's what needs to happen. And I think from a collaboration standpoint, it makes them really easy then to collaborate with their customers. They can send recaps after the meetings rather quickly instead of having to wait till the end of the day when they're finished with all their calls. And I think that just builds such a stronger relationship with our customers and builds so much trust with our customers. But then I also think about this collaborative, the other side of it, which is not what generative AI is doing to help you with collaboration, but the time it's freeing up for you to be more collaborative. So again, like I think generative AI, some of the really powerful things it's bringing is taking away some of those like really tedious tasks that you can automate. So if you can take things out of my day-to-day that are taking me a ton of time, that hinders me from then being able to go collaborate with someone else in my organization and be creative and talk about what's our next campaign that we're running, or what do we need to be thinking about with our product. Where I really think about Gen AI fitting in there is like, what in my day-to-day can you take away from me that takes a ton of time? And great examples of that are like ideating campaigns. I might have an idea of one thing we want to do from a campaigns perspective for marketing, but turning that into like a full-blown campaign of, what ads are we putting into market? What's our sellers saying? Like, how are we using this? I can use generative AI to help me do that rather quickly. And that frees up my time to then do more collaboration that I normally wouldn't have time to do in a remote world where I'm in calls all day long and I'm not meeting with my team. So I think there's like the two sides of this coin, which is there are tools and ways you can use generative AI to help you be more collaborative, like the note-taking and summary of meetings, but then also what can you do to take really tedious tasks away from me so I can be more collaborative, which is something as humans I think we need time to do.
Yeah, I kind of want to add to that too, is so coming from a more engineering perspective, like working with my engineers, that collaboration, they actually use Gen AI to like collaborate. So because sometimes you run into errors and like sometimes the engineers don't know what the error is. They can pop that into like Gen AI and then get like, hey, based on that context and what errors they're running into, here's what might, help solve this situation. And they can kind of use that as like another person in the room almost to help collaborate. And then kind of talking about like the customer experience as well. From our customer support team, we get a lot of requests of like, hey, this customer needs to, they need to change all of their employees' roles or something, and we don't have a tool for that yet. So typically an engineer would have to come in and write that script and like be able to like go and it would basically take like a day of work to put that into practice. But they actually can work with Gen AI to be like, hey, can you come up with a script that can take this file and generate, a CSV or a SQL script that can output it. And then it gets like 90% of the way there. Of course, like, it's not going to be perfect every time. They have to go through and like make sure that it's working correctly. But like at least just getting that initial script together and being able to review it and modify it is really powerful as well. And it helps, save them time, like, because I want my engineers working on product related things and not these kind of, custom support requests. And so it's really helped out there to be able to enable them to be quicker in getting those support requests out.
I feel like that's such a good example. And as someone who is not very technical, I've also used generative AI to write scripts. Like I'll be running a campaign on LinkedIn, I'll be running ads, and I need to track conversions. And LinkedIn will give me a code. I'm like, I don't know how to, like, I can't write the script for this. Like, I'm in marketing. That's not my background. But also my engineering team is slammed, so I'm not going to go ask them. So from a collaboration standpoint, I can go into a tool that has generative AI, say, hey, can you spit out a script for me, which I've done many times, and then collaboratively send it to someone on my eng team and be like, can you spot check this for me? Because I have no idea if this is right or wrong. But it does, to your point, it gets me 90 to 95% of the way there, where instead I would have had to like go back and forth on Slack with our eng team and take up some of their time that they should be spending on building our product and making it even better. The things that take a cognitive load that you do over and over and over again. And I think all these topics that we're talking about, like workflows and productivity and collaboration, every time it takes something out of your cognitive load and you're really focusing your time and effort there mentally, it makes it hard to do your other tasks that are like innovative, creative. And one of the things that we saw at Qualified quite a bit is part of our product is chat functionality. So our reps are online. If a target account lands on your website, it's someone you want to talk to. And our reps are really good at this, but day in and day out, trying to think of like witty, pithy things to say to a website visitor gets really heavy load cognitively. Like you can't be that creative over and over and over again. So we started to use generative AI to help prompt reps with things to say. So if someone's on the site, we can scrape, what are they doing on the site right now? What's on their website? Like, what are they actively browsing? And help give suggestions to the reps of things that they can say. And I do think from a workflow perspective, it just helps take away some of that cognitive load, that they're not having to think about this all the time. And like, it's just so difficult for them to do. And it's been a massive improvement in response rates. People are chatting more because it's not the reps just getting burned out on saying the same thing over and over and over again. Up here, I have two in particular, I think, that are challenges from a like sales and marketing standpoint. The first one being just the human element. So Sean, to your point, like generative AI will spit out something. It could be right. It could be wrong. Typically, if you're using it to write like outbound mail, emails, or like ad copy, whatever it is, you might not have time to stop and double check. But the other part of that is the human voice. Like people all have their own unique way of talking. And I think I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so I've seen this a lot. When you just let generative AI write your copy for you over and over, it starts to all sound really similar. And I can scroll through LinkedIn and pretty easily spot like this, a human did not write this. Like this has no like human inflection to it. It is just starting to all sound the same. So I think trying to encourage our sellers and marketers, like don't lose our brand voice, don't lose your own voice, because if it feels robotic, your prospect's not going to open it. They're not going to read it because they just are learning to tune it out. And the second challenge, I think, is just a framework around what people on our team, like just getting everyone on the same page. So one of the examples, we actually interviewed the chief evangelist at Gong. His name is Udi. And one of the things he actually brought up that I had never thought about is he said, if your team is putting in proprietary information into ChatGPT and asking it to help write an email, that's now publicly available to your competitors. So if you're, if someone on my marketing team, on say our product marketing team, is putting in a bunch of information about our product and saying, hey, help me write this landing page copy, that's great. But what it just input into that learning model is now available. And now it's not necessarily going to always show up in our competitors' stuff, but suddenly now that is out in the ether in a way that we have no control or say over. So I think just having some sort of like systems in place internally, it's hard to get everyone on the same page. It's a new tool. It's really exciting. So people are getting really gung-ho about using it, and having guidelines in place internally of what you can and can't input is rather hard to do because people go a little bit rogue.
Yeah. I totally feel that. There's some times where you read things and it's like, yeah, no, that's not what it needs to be.
Or like I put stuff in and it spits it out. I'm like, this isn't me. Like I would never post this. This doesn't sound like me. And then it takes more time for me to edit it. So I'm like, I'll just write it myself. But it helps get the thought going. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I'll pull this in. But just a copy and paste is starting to feel rightfully very robotic.
Yeah. I would completely agree with you there. And we actually did have a question come in. It was addressed to Sarah from Andrew. And he said, what about using AI to pick out themes in prospects reviews, then using that to outbound?
Yeah, I think that's such a good idea. And I work really closely in demand gen. I kind of straddle this line of like marketing and sellers. which is very cool. But what I've learned is not many sellers are really good at writing. That's just not something that is in their day-to-day. They're really good at like face-to-face conversations, but the creativity it takes to write really solid emails, it's hard. Like it's hard for me to do. And my whole degree is in communications, and that's still difficult for me to do. So we do have reps that will take like G2 reviews and they'll aggregate them. A great example is like a competitive campaign. So if we have a bunch of G2 reviews or wherever you're aggregating reviews from, and you've got a really consistent theme that you're finding is coming up about why someone is choosing you over a competitor, they can plug those reviews into a chat GPT or some other type of generative AI tool to help them write emails that pull those themes in a easier way than them just like slapping reviews into the emails. And it's not in their own words. There's also really cool tools out there. Like I've worked really closely with the head of marketing over a tool called Jasper AI. So there are like the free tools like ChatGPT, obviously, that you can do this yourself and do the prompts, but it takes a little bit of time. Or alternatively, there are tools on the market now that are getting built that can do things like this for you. And Sean, you kind of mentioned about training models. Their models are trained on your data as opposed to like a very wide like ChatGPT that's being trained on all of these different inputs. You can choose a tool that also is a little bit more specific to you and you're training that model. So I think both, and it's a great idea to take those reviews and let generative AI write you something good that picks up on those themes.
I want to go ahead and kick it off with some questions that we had come in prior to the webinar. And one that really, I think, touches and resonates with what you were just talking about, Sarah, and I'd love to direct this question to you. But, how do you ensure that AI generated content really aligns with brand identity and messaging, especially in creative industries like marketing and design? Is it just making sure that there is that like final human touch point at the end of it? Or, what would that process look like?
Yeah, I think there's a few different things here. I think the first is having some sort of like council in place that trains the company on like, what is your brand voice? If you're putting something into a generative AI platform, what are things you need to watch for? So like setting up sort of a council internally and helping train your people that might be using this. I think that's one part of it. I think the other part of it is if it's something that you're starting to use more frequently, you think it's beneficial to your organization, which I think everyone on this call agrees, like generative AI obviously is going to be massively impactful and it's only going to get better, is deciding if something is useful enough. Do you need to start looking for a tool on it that is only learning from your inputs? So I kind of touched on that earlier, but if you're using something that's open sourced and it's not, you have no ability to really train it on your brand voice and what you're saying and what you want the output to be. I'll use Qualified as an example just because it's the thing I'm most familiar with, but we have what we call a sandbox in our own product. So I kind of mentioned we've got like auto suggest and auto expand where reps can type something, it can expand it or suggest responses, whatever it is. But I can go in and train our model with just a simple thumbs up, thumbs down of like, yes, this is good. No, this is bad. And that helps train that model on what I want it to be from my brand voice, what I want it to be consistent with what we want our sellers saying. And that's something that if it was not in our tool or a tool we had purchased, I wouldn't have the ability to train it in that way. So I think my recommendation for anyone listening is if you're running into those issues and you've kind of seen answers get spit out from your team on generative AI that aren't matching your brand voice, but it's something that you need because you recognize it's taking repetitive tasks away from off of your team's plate, it's helping them be more creative. Maybe there's a time and a place where you need to start evaluating other tools that are on the market that you can help train in your own brand.